UCLA knows who its quarterback's going to be in 26. Now we just need to get some protection for Nico Iamaleava.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I am your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. What we're tapping into today, we're going to throw some shade at the USC Notre Dame rivalry ending. And what does that mean that UCLA is now USC's only true football rival? We'll talk about that at the end of the show. In the middle, we got some intriguing UCLA basketball recruiting development. Maybe they look at something in the middle of the year as well. We'll talk about that as the second segment. And in the first, let's start with this. Nico Iamaleava already announced his intent to return. Hyped up by the UCLA social media accounts, hyped up by Nico himself. Not a loud, boastful guy, but says he's returning. But as we all agree, Nico is a guy that's going to need some semblance of protection. So here are a couple of options UCLA should go, some of which we're going to start with James Madison, one who's already announced his intention to transfer, another one that I think the Bruins, if they can convince him to come to UCLA, should. But this is all what Bob Chesney has seen from his playoff game at Oregon to now his move fully to Westwood and UCLA. So here is the first big domino the Bruins could go after here in this portal season. According to Haas Fawcett, one of the guys who announced his intention to transfer was a starting left tackle for James Madison, Joseph Simmons, who according to On3 as a 6'6" left tackle, 323 pounds. He has over 1,200 snaps as an offensive tackle in his career, has 1 year of eligibility left, 14 pressures allowed in the 2025 season. And remember, James Madison played 14 games. You mix in the playoff game, you mix in their conference championship game, that's maybe a pressure per game. And if there's a guy you want to be a stopgap starter to start the revolution for UCLA football, then you go target some of those guys at James Madison, like a Joseph Simmons, if he's looking to move over to UCLA. And some of the guys who are announcing their intention to transfer are probably just going to follow Bob Chesney. Other guys are on a national stage after getting put on a Friday night conference championship game, beating Troy, and then they go play Oregon in their CFP first round game. They might be looking to get a big buck or two. And I was looking around 24/7 Sports, and the roundabout number you could see for an offensive lineman is what, $400,000, $600,000. As long as the Bruins didn't overpay for Nico, they don't overspend for some other talent, they're going to have to make their money available to these transfer offensive linemen and defensive linemen. And from what I'm understanding, UCLA is putting up a pretty penny to bring in Bob Chesney to UCLA. They're committing to bringing back Nico. They are committed to trying to engage the fan experience, although I'm not sure they're doing it the right way if they go to SoFi, but they are going to engage in new ways to get players, which is, hey, let's just offer them more resources to bring players in. Namely, let's go get a guy like Joseph Simmons, a guy from James Madison who is probably one of the better offensive linemen out there, who has veteran starting experience. And not every guy from James Madison can make the full transition, but I take the guy who's been there for a few years, who started many snaps started many snaps in his career, and most recently on this James Madison team, could hopefully follow his current / former coach and follow him to UCLA. Another list I was looking at from 24/7 Sports perspective, in terms of they listed a lot of solid offensive linemen who may or may not have intentions to transfer. One of the guys listed was another James Madison recruit who at this moment has not announced his intention to transfer. So this guy's not officially in the portal. There's no news of him going in the portal, but they can convince him to come in the portal. Would be a good addition alongside Simmons, I believe, on the offensive line. Interior offensive lineman Trent Wilson just finished his true freshman year, was solid. He's a Texas kid, 6'4", just shy of 300 pounds. And so far, if he does go and says, hey, I want extra years of eligibility, UCLA would be first pick him up, said, hey, come here, come play and finish your career with Bob Chesney, who was a part of his staff that saw him start in his true freshman year. And if he can develop at James Madison, develop at UCLA, then you're starting to build a couple of offensive line pieces without having to go too far. So Trent Wilson as a solid, what, 2025, 71.3 on Pro Football Focus grade already. This is a guy who, if he comes to UCLA without initially announcing his intention to transfer, would be a good get. So Simmons has already announced, according to On3, that he is going to transfer. Wilson is somebody who has to make that decision for himself, and this is by no means saying that he will or will not. Other potentials, you could look at group of five. You could go look at the power four. Another intriguing one is Anwar O'Neal from Delaware, right? Delaware alongside Missouri State, couple of those teams who have begun or finished their FCS to FBS transitions, sitting there at the bottom of the group of five. Anwar O'Neal, who would be a senior, is another guy, more East Coast based, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But if Bob Chesney, who has those East Coast ties, recruiting ties, he can bring in a guy like an Anwar O'Neal, right? Chesney, began his career coaching wise in the Northeast. Well, if he can come bring a guy who played his college career more on the East Coast over the West Coast, you've got Anwar O'Neal, who has announced his intent to transfer, and convince him to come to UCLA, another one of those senior offensive linemen for a year, and start to build the program from the bottom up. That could be huge, right? So for O'Neal, finished the season pretty well, but looking for maybe that upgrade either in financial compensation, in terms of competition for a full year. And you might see some of those guys, whether it's the guys who played at the Power Four level or didn't play, looking to go elsewhere, right? UCLA could go across town and take a USC transfer, or what UCLA could do is simply watch Chesney's ability to develop, pluck a couple of top guys who had strong, underrated seasons at their respective spots and develop them into contenders. All right. But clearly, UCLA has the resources, or they're trying to make it known that they have resources available to go get some of the top guys. So maybe we don't even have to be looking at some of these guys who are sitting there at the group of five level. Go find some top tier starters in the transfer portal. But what Curt Cignetti was able to do at Indiana was turn them into a physical juggernaut that played smash mouth football in year one. And then they just clearly outmuscled a lot of teams in year two, right? Curt Cignetti went from bringing James Madison to new heights, going to Indiana, taking them to the playoff. And then when they played Eugene in his second year in Indiana, they went from being outmuscled against Ohio State year one to flat out outmuscling and dominating Ohio State and Oregon as now the current number one seed waiting to play in the Rose Bowl. And that's what Chesney might not fully get to in year one, but any upgrades at the offensive line position or offensive line as a whole will unlock Nico's ability to stay protected in the pocket for more than just a millisecond and force him to make better reads down the field in terms of throwing, keep him upright, and not just have him scramble utilizing his athletic positioning as well. We're going to talk next about UCLA men's basketball recruiting, because maybe there's another prospect, according to 24/7 Sports. The Bruins are pivoting while Christian Collins, a top 10 recruit in the country, has opened his recruitment. Who else could the Bruins look at that fits the same mold as Collins? Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. There's nothing like the college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part, well, used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. But that's why Gametime gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets, experiences, all with just a few taps. You open the Gametime app, you're like, oh, just in a couple of taps, I can get my tickets. And I'm not just waiting for everything to say yes, yes, yes. No, it's like, oh, I see the tickets with the fees clicked over. Like, I know exactly what I'm going to pay, and I can see what the view is from my seat. And it makes my decision so much easier. I'm taking it a lot less time than I would be if I was looking elsewhere. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets and more with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. All right, cruising on here, Locked On UCLA. The Bruins, obviously, they have one big-time commit, Javonte Floyd from Georgia in the 2026 class. Mick Cronin made it a point to go after an athletic center. The Bruins haven't hit hard the recruiting trail for some of the top-tier talent in SoCal. So the question is, where are they going to pivot? There's a lot of connection between them and Christian Collins, a St. John Bosco product, who surprisingly had pushed his recruitment and commitment date to the spring, then reopened his commitment when it was the final three of UCLA, USC, and Kentucky, with many experts leaning him to choosing Kentucky. Well, the fact that he's reopened his commitment means that Kentucky didn't necessarily stand out or go fully on board with a big commitment NIL, whatever it was, something broke down there. Then you have UCLA, USC, who, he's like, well, if I'm not firmly committing to one of those two schools, well, I'm going to go look at the Illinois and the Vanderbilts, those two places that offered him right around the time when he was getting ready to make a final decision. He said, no, 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 let's open this up. So the Bruins in the mix for a 6'8 talented small forward, power forward, who plays tough defense. But here's another guy that Travis Brandon reported to 24/7 Sports that the UCLA Bruins are going after. Kid at Montverde Academy in 2026 grad, 6'8 power forward, a 4-star, a top 10 prospect in the state of Florida, about a top 50 product nationally, and he's 6'8", and this is what Adam Finkelstein had to say about Phylon, a 4-star product. 6'8", he's got a 6'11 wingspan. He's a wiry athlete who can run and jump, top speed and explosiveness when it's going. The only problem is he can't exactly shoot. So the numbers aren't the best on three-point shots, 23%, less than 60% at the free throw line. But what Finkelstein had to say, the director of scouting for 24/7 Sports, an elite defensive prospect and almost blocks 2 shots per game and has more than a steal per game. All right. So what Cronin needs on this year's team is that defensive player in the post. And now, obviously, if the UCLA Bruins could have had the guy who could play a little bit of offense and play elite defense, they'd have that. Jamerson can't stay on the court long enough defensively without fouling for that to work, and his limitations offensively don't make him as good of an option as Xavier Booker when he's clicking on all cylinders. So what Cronin is trying to make sure he gets next year, a center, and then an elite power forward defensively, because he's going to lose the scoring of Tyler Bilodeau. Potentially, if Joe Phylon, who is adding UCLA in the mix here, that's somebody they could go after. And with Phylon, he's had official visits recently to South Florida, had an official visit to Ohio State, UNLV. UNLV threw in an offer. UCLA's throwing in one in there too. So you're mixing in some West Coast battles, some East Coast recruiting battles, and Big Ten Conference rivalry battles for a 6'8 product. And you're like, well, Christian College is around the same stature, a little bit more offensively gifted. Does that mean UCLA's probably not fully in on Collins compared to Joe Phylon? And my wondering is if this is getting linked out there, UCLA might be trying to pivot to a plan B. All right. And I think with Cronin, the way this team is super senior laden, he might go after one extra high school commit. They have Floyd, and with Bilodeau graduating, I think he wants another guy in the wings. Brandon Williams been in the program for 3 years. EDJ is already a junior. You got a lot of guys who you still got to convince to stay and a lot of roster spots to fill out. So this year in recruiting, UCLA has to go after a guy that can help be an elite rim protector. And that's what he really misses on this team, the elite defensive intensity that Cronin wants so badly. And that's what we're seeing. He might even sacrifice the offense, the extra NIL dollars, go find that in the portal, and on the back end, pack the post with rim protectors. So as the numbers already said already, he is a 23% three-point shooter. And I'm not sure if that's fully the high school line or if that's him stretched out to the college line. But at Montverde Academy, he's not really shooting that well, but his defensive intensity is something that's always going to catch the eye of a Mick Cronin staff. He will sacrifice the offense down low sometimes to get an elite rim protector and a guy that gets in the lanes. He touts the development of Clark turning into an elite National Defensive Player of the Year to eventually a top tier, a solid offensive contributor by the time his senior season came together. And that's what made UCLA elite. You found a freshman scorer, a little bit of Mari Bailey. You had senior talent around you, some rim protection, and a super senior stopper on the wing. And if they can develop a guy like a Phylon, that would fit well into Mick Cronin's defensive mold. But the more they recruit this guy, the less likely it is for Christian Collins. I think Collins would fit well with Mick Cronin as a top-tier freshman in the state of California, but it appears that might not be looking the case. Another thought I want to leave with you is there's been a growing number of mid-year transfers, all right? Some of which coming from the G League, some of which coming from Europe. And I was even rereading a post from Sports Illustrated about the growing number of players going in mid-year. They even quoted in this article Eric Musselman. This is about what, mid-December, so this is at the time of this recording a week old, that Eric Musselman was quoted in this Sports Illustrated article saying, "We need a body," the USC coach, after their win against an opponent. The semester ends on Wednesday. If we could somehow get another player, I'd like to get that done too, if we can make it happen. That's Eric Musselman, who's just across town talking about the need to build a roster still midseason. Now they're missing Rodney Rice. He's out for the year. They have, I think, another player who's out for the year, if I'm not mistaken. They have some significant injuries. They're hoping to get a guy back from injury, I believe, too. But this is a team where you're like, man, you look at former G Leaguers who were recruited late, like Abdullah Ahmed, who went to BYU late in the recruiting process, guys who have a semester of eligibility who might come through in the middle of the year when the semester break happens. And that's why you start to see these high schoolers leave high school early, come in, go college, right? Then you have Europeans or international recruits, or you mix in the G Leaguers who are trying to build something. Some teams are looking for centers. Why wouldn't UCLA try that option? Obviously, it's pretty tough to bring in guys for a quarter, but if you think about it, if they come in for a quarter and they are just eligible enough by the time the tournament happens, then they could be a quarter sensation, right? UCLA got one of those players come in, I forgot the name of him, but come in the 2021 Final Four run during the COVID situation. Obviously, a little different because you had the year of eligibility gifted back to the players. Yet here UCLA is needing a center. If they could go find somebody anywhere, I wonder if Mick Cronin is even looking at that potential, or if he's like, I'm not ruining the chemistry. I'm not going after that. Just wondering if he could go out and find somebody like some of these other schools are doing. Oklahoma, who just added somebody, 23-year-old Russian in the middle of this year. USC's coach outspoken after a win about his team's need for depth. And we know UCLA needs some post presence. Why not go get somebody outside? Next, we'll talk about UCLA no longer being little brother to USC because they're doing little brother behavior currently. Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump in the moment with live spreads as the money lines adjust instantaneously. Well, let's tell you about this. UCLA, UC Riverside. It is a 24.5-point spread. The Bruins massive favorites, but I think UC Riverside might cover according to that 24.5-point spread. It's a midday game, might be a lackluster crowd. I might lean UCR to cover as 24.5-point dogs at Pauley Pavilion as a team who just beat Cal Poly a couple weeks ago. UCLA struggled with Cal Poly as well, so I think that might be the case. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, but if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Cruising on here with Locked On UCLA. Yes, welcome everybody who thinks I'm in my parents' garage. Not quite, visiting family all across the country. It's the holiday season, Christmas time, so bear with me as we have the fun backgrounds, if you will. Don't always have the most spacious recording space if I don't have that UCLA background in the back. Remember, I am not home. But here we go. Speaking about home, home life's not good for some USC fans. Check in on them, laugh in their face. Why? Because USC is putting a pause in the rivalry with Notre Dame. All right, putting a pause in the rivalry with Notre Dame because that just was announced a day ago that Notre Dame is scheduling BYU playing in Provo and then hosting BYU in 27, which means USC and their only rival right now in football is what they all look at us as little brother. Here's the problem. You can't let them say little brother nonsense. They can't say little bro, University of blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. The good old USC brand is taking a hit. Lincoln Riley's nonsense is costing what I would think a lot of USC fans a key rivalry. The problem is, well, they're going to point to UCLA being a little brother. And while they have Notre Dame acting like a spoiled brat in the other corner, they didn't want to deal with the spoiled brat. But here we are, UCLA stepping up our game. USC is stepping down in their eyes. Oh, we're stepping down. We want to play Notre Dame in a game in November or whenever it's a mid-October game out in South Bend. No, 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 no. Go play the games. That's why you play the games. Why play a bunch of cupcakes and then try to make a CFP? Well, it doesn't matter because it hasn't worked any which way for USC in the CFP era. So, as us UCLA faithful, don't look at it. If anybody's putting in the comments little brother behavior, tell them, look at yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell me that your current head coach you're paying lots and lots of money to, who can sometimes act like a jerk, who can sometimes make some puzzling decisions. Who knows if he's going to be a USC lifer? Not even going to. No, no, no. They're acting like little brother. So if they point to you, say a little. No, 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 no. Go check yourself first. Go check. Don't come into this comment section and don't come check on. No, no, no. Go check yourself first. Acting like a little brother over there when you're trying to deal with your extra stepchild brethren, sibling, and be like, hey, yeah, yeah, that's our rival. No, 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 no. UCLA, USC is the true born and bred rivalry. All right. Now, it does hurt college football with that rivalry ending on the other end. I remember for the longest time, UCLA used to play Notre Dame in basketball for a very long time before that ended many, many moons ago. So here's the thing for UCLA. The time is now to step on this USC team. If they crumble, with this supposed number one recruiting class in the country coming in, and Lincoln Riley bolts, or things don't go as expected, this is UCLA's time to strike. They host USC at home. USC is going to be displaced potentially for a season when the Olympics come. If the Bruins can revitalize the fan base at the Rose Bowl or drive in a real home experience that brings the fans out to wherever they play their home games, then they can build their identity. It happened almost 40 years ago when they moved to the Rose Bowl. They took advantage of that momentum, brought in a new identity, a new image to UCLA football, and became a team that would dominate USC, be successful, have true home fans, hosting big name teams and beating them in a national spotlight. A team that would be contending for that first chance at a BCS title. Now, as the playoff continues to get bigger and more expanded, and more opportunities for programs like UCLA and a super big conference, you get the right schedule. If your next door neighbor is currently doing some dumb stuff, or just in this case, really stupid stuff, not completely dumb stuff, there's crazy things going across the country, but if that armor is cracking just a little bit, the shine is turning into stain and stink, well, UCLA has to take advantage. Because the Bruins, let's be real, we've had our own stink, hurting ourselves in terms of, oh, let's just get in our own way, let's not have the support. They're trying to remove every roadblock, despite still trying to get in our own way, which was the Bruins for life fiasco, trying to figure out where the home games are. No, 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 no. No longer are we looking like little brother. They're paying a winning coach, helping him bring his staff over the West Coast, who just got to a CFP. You bring in the guys who he can evaluate as Big Ten talent, the guys who he evaluates as players to develop in the portal this year, and then start stockpiling high school players. All of a sudden, this is a UCLA program that can start acting together in football. Basketball-wise, UCLA, let's maintain those rivalries with the Arizonas, the Gonzagas, right? Let's keep that West Coast foothold a thing. Let's keep playing those games. And I think they still have one more game in the Arizona series. I think that's in Vegas. And I think the rumor, the thing that was coming out was that, what was it, John Rothstein saying that UCLA is going to play Gonzaga for another game or two coming up in a renewal of the series. Keep that going in basketball. Let's not look and be afraid of these non-conference battles. Let's play them, especially the regional super battles between the Arizona Wildcats, which should be a conference matchup, whole nother problem, and when you're dealing with the situation that is, Gonzaga. Keep playing them. Don't wait till March. Don't wait till April. Build the storylines throughout the year, become national, and not become laughed at or a joke by early December and have an apathetic fan base in every sport. No, let's continue to support and move forward in this new day and age of college athletics, which changes every day. Will the NCAA be a thing in a year or two? Who knows? That's not my job to figure out. just to have fun, poke and prod. All right. And that's why you'll be here with Locked On UCLA when we recap that UCLA UCR game with a reaction, when we have more portal options, guys who commit, new coaches coming over. And hey, if we have terrible hot takes or great ones, like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Become an everydayer. Join the Everydayer Club. Locked On Podcast Network is the #1 sports podcast network out there. And hey, Locked On UCLA is a part of that. So thanks for your support. If USC fans come up here and say, you're a little brother, no. Send them back over to the other channels. Get out of here. Get out of here. You're acting like a little brother on your own. If you're saying I'm in my mother's basement, clearly not. It's Christmas week. I'm out traveling with family, so enjoy that. Have a good time. Hands up, Bruins fans. Hey, clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.